Welcome to the Inner Fire Climbing Podcast. I am Jesse Firestone. Well, it's spring. The snow's melting. The weather is great. I don't know about you, but my skin is trashed. The days are getting longer, which is one of my absolute favorite phenomena as a denizen of planet Earth. Longer days just feel optimistic. Plenty of sunshine left to do other stuff if things don't work out the way you hoped they would. I don't know about you, but I could use a little brightness. I think the vernal equinox might be my favorite holiday. Anyways, Ethan Pringle is one of the true all-arounders in our sport. He's bouldered and sport climbed and trad climbed pretty much all the hard stuff all over the planet, including quite a few notable ascents. Made a short list. Second ascent of Evolution, second ascent of Jumbo Love, first ascent of 1,000 Cool Highballs, Realization, Wheel of Life, Cobra Crack, Thor's Hammer, The Nest, most of Rockland's. If you took a bunch of climbers from my era and glued their bucket lists together, you'd basically get Ethan's tick list. He's well known for his lengthy sieges and being quite public about his struggles, both inside and outside of his climbing. He's well-spoken and humble guy, and I think that comes through here. We talked about a little bit of everything. I was personally really interested in finding some kind of through line that explains Ethan's motivation and his execution and his success with all these historical lines. So we did talk about that quite a lot. But unsurprisingly, we also spent a lot of our time on our mutual interest in highball bouldering. And so there's a little bit to be gleaned there, I'm sure. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this conversation. And without further ado, Ethan Pringle. It's really hard for me to get my camera all the way over there. Oh. I can't pick him up. He's too chonky for me to pick him up and show you.
Cute. What's his name again?
His name's Ty.
Ty.
Yeah, you have like a thing for like picking up dogs, I've seen.
I do. I like holding dogs like babies.
Yeah, totally. I could still do that with him, but he used to be really skinny and now he's yeah.
That happens, I guess, in middle age.
Yeah, he's got that like healer cattle dog thing where he's just like expanding and he just is, yeah, he's so round. He used to be so skinny and now he's so round.
He's like a little like barrel.
That. Yeah, totally.
Well, now that you started recording, I have to... Oh!
Yeah.
Look! Snowflake!
That's Snowflake. Snowflake is chatty. Snowflake.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't always like to be held. In fact, he doesn't like to be held very much of the time. But look at Jesse. Oh, biting.
So what's where are you right now? You're back home?
I'm at my mom's house, yeah.
Okay.
In the Bay Area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of just go on crazy travels and then return home to Snowflake? Is that the...
I go on crazy travels and then I always end up back at my mom's house.
It's kind of your landing spot?
Basically, yeah. Yeah, all my stuff is here. Trying to devise a way to spend a little less time here in the future, but for some reason I always get sucked back in and then I'm here.
That's not the worst thing to like spend time with your family.
It's not, yeah, but living with your parents. I mean, I'm sure everyone's experience is different, but what does seem universal is that it's difficult to spend prolonged periods of time with your parents. So yeah, living with your mom at 38 is, well, for me it feels pretty difficult.
It kind of feels to me this is not the topic of the podcast, but it has felt to me like when I was in my teens and 20s, I was the kid and they were my parent, and there was this clear dynamic. And now that I've become more of an adult, it's like when you spend a lot of time around them, you're like finding out if you're actually friends with them and if you have like things to talk about and interests, to like make the relationship dynamic in a different way besides like parent-child, because I don't really, I don't want to be parented that much. I'm also 38, it's not like I need that much parenting from my parents, every once in a while I want some advice, but even then I'm kind of like, take it or leave it.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's interesting with family to wonder if they're the type of people that you would be friends with if you weren't related to them. I do really like my mom. I mean, she's always been like a really inspiring and obviously loving person to me. She's like a very badass woman, and she's like, devoted her life to being a public defender, and she's just so smart and funny. But yeah, I think like living here, we're definitely, it's like there's definitely some unresolved trauma and childhood wounds that are triggered pretty often, and yeah, I'm just like, why do I keep coming back here? I could just like go live in my van.
Yeah.
But for some reason I'm choosing to have these wounds opened again and again. So
you really strike me. This is why I wanted to talk to you. So that's maybe a good segue, but you have always struck me as a climber who like kind of picks objectives no matter how like out there they are. And you kind of like will go for things. You're in South Africa, and then you're in Portugal, and I think you were in Greenland, and you're just kind of like bouncing around really crazily. Do you feel like there's like maybe you're craving some stability because when you're going on trips, you're not just going to the same place that every other climber goes. You do some of that too, but like, you're doing some wild stuff sometimes. So maybe that stability is like helpful in some way. You feel that?
I definitely thrive with some stability and routine. I know that because I don't have that very often, but I have had that here and there in my adult life, and every time I do have that, I feel much more centered.
Yeah.
And
do you ever like write down how much time you spent in like Rocklands or something, and it's like, oh, I've actually spent more time there than I've spent at home in the last however many years?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that is necessarily the case, but overall I have spent a lot of time there, especially in the last 3 years, or just in South Africa in general. But yeah, when I was just in South Africa this season, their summer, our winter, I had a routine, and it felt nice to kind of do the same thing every week. I feel like it does help me to have that, which is something that if you're traveling a lot, it's nearly impossible to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Even with a nice van setup and stuff, it doesn't really ever touch the stability that you get having like a home base. It's different.
Totally. Yeah. Having a home base and not leaving for prolonged periods of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
A home base that's your own. Because I do have a home base here in Pinole where my mom lives, but it doesn't really feel like my house at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not the same kind of like stability. And it doesn't seem to me like do you spend that much time, that much chunk of the year in your van, like cruising around the U.S.? Because you've climbed a lot of the stuff in the U.S.
When I bought the van near the start of COVID and then planned to build it out, my plan was to live in it full time, basically. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, that just didn't really happen. I take trips in it, and sometimes the trips are longer and sometimes they're shorter. But I haven't lived in it full time since I got it and built it. But that was the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I did my stint with van life, and I feel like it's highly romanticized, but, it takes a special kind of person to do it indefinitely, I think.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I don't know if anyone... It seems like there are a lot of people who seem really comfortable with it on Instagram, and then, you're like, oh, you have a place now. Like, you have a place and you're selling your van or whatever. So I think it's like everyone... Like, there are some people who can do it for a time, and then I think everyone eventually gets sick of it and wants more space and more comforts.
Yeah, an oven to bake cookies in or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some people do have that in their van. It was funny. I found this van life person on Instagram a day or two ago, and I was looking at some of their reels because I was like, wow, this person is like kind of a climber, kind of a van life road person, and they have, I don't know, way more followers than I do, like triple the amount or something. And then so I was looking at their reels, and obviously they're posting very consistently, but one of their reels was like, 10 things or 5 things I have in my van that I don't actually need that I really thought I would need, and the first one was an oven. And I remember debating getting an oven or not, and I'm glad I didn't now.
Yeah, it's probably not something you would like make use of all the time. Maybe like an air fryer. I don't know.
That's what, yeah, the guy who owned the van build company where I did my build, he was trying to convince me to get an air fryer.
Yeah, they're pretty sweet. Especially because like when you're living in a van, you have leftovers all the time, and air fryers are pretty great for leftovers, for sure.
Right. I don't have one, but my fiance Katie has one, and we use it to cook potatoes sometimes.
Oh, you got engaged?
Yeah. We got engaged last year, like a year ago, basically.
Oh, cool! Congrats. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're
That's
getting
awesome.
married in Rocklands this summer.
All right. Well, you're gonna have to find another permanent homestead, dude. I think that's a requirement of marriage.
Yeah. I think that's gonna be her place in Cape Town.
Oh, gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Semi-permanent, at least.
She's South African or Portuguese or some of both, or what? How does that work?
Well, she was born in Cape Town. Her dad is like part Portuguese, basically. So he speaks Portuguese. He grew up, I think he spent the first like 10 or 12 years of his life there or something. So he's fluent in Portuguese. I think it's actually his first language. And yeah, he didn't learn English until he was like in middle school or something. But she doesn't speak Portuguese. She knows some words and stuff and some phrases, but she doesn't speak it. But she does have the passport.
Gotcha.
And we did go there together.
Yeah. I want to talk about the trip you were just on in South Africa, because you were just, I mean, this is what I was talking about at the beginning about, like, I feel like you're just always doing crazy stuff. You're just posting these videos of this wall that's like kind of a big wall, but it clearly has like a sport wall in the middle of it, and it looks like a huge pain in the ass. And what was that? What were you doing down there?
Well, so I guess to back up a little bit, Katie and I were in Yosemite in November, and I was projecting Meltdown, and I was getting super close, and then we had to basically we like dropped everything and flew to Cape Town because Katie's mom was not doing so well, and we were pretty worried about her, so we just bailed from California and flew to Cape Town. And when I went, I was like thinking I probably wouldn't climb outside very much there because it was, spring entering summer, obviously not ideal bouldering temps. I was like, well, maybe I'll do a little bit of climbing around Cape Town, like in the immediate crags there, but because it's coastal, there'll probably be some sea breeze, but the conditions will probably be horrible, and I'll just be training in the gym or something. And my plan was basically to do like a training block. And then I got there, and this friend of ours, Tristan, showed me pictures of this wall that he knew didn't have any roots on it. And I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. He was like, it is a really long hike up this hill, and there's no trail yet. But, we could find one. So we went up there, and yeah, it's an hour and a half straight up this like steep, shitty hillside. But the wall is enormous. It's very impressive. It's one of the most impressive like sport crags I've ever seen. It's probably like 300 or 400 meters wide or something from like the furthest most right route to the furthest most left. Wow. And yeah, I mean, you could put up another route, like you could probably have like 30 or more routes, with a route every 30 or 40 feet, and You know, there's just so much space, so much real estate. But the first time I went up there, I thought, oh, it looks pretty chossy. I don't know if it's worth it. But then I there's like, you know, it's this massive amphitheater, and there's kind of different like layers to it. The further left you go, the layers at the bottom get steeper. Like there's a slab on the right that slowly turns to vert, and then on the left it's like a roof and overhanging. So you walk out on this ledge, and I walked out on the ledge the first time we went there, and I looked up and I spotted some lines, and I thought, wow, if those were possible, they would be very mega, like regardless of how hard they are. And I just like got, you know, way too curious not to go back and investigate. But it was a huge pain in the ass to like get ropes to the top and figure out top access and yeah, just get down to where the lines that I wanted to bolt on the left like finished. But I did the work, and you know, I bolted 3 514s, and I did them all. I did the last one my last day at the Crag before I left.
Nice.
So
Classic.
that was pretty cool. I also bolted like 4.5 like warm up pitches between like 510 and 12C. It's really good 510.
What kind of rock is it?
It's like Western Cape sandstone, so it's sandstone, but it's got quite a bit of quartz in it, and it's very bullet. It actually some parts of the wall do have some choss and some loose blocks and stuff, especially because there's like on the wall on the right, I bolted these little 2-pitch routes, and the second pitches are a bit steeper. They're like in the 512 range, and I did have to hack quite a bit of like loose blocks. But I mean, it's funny because it's not chossy in the sense where the rock is really soft and it'll just deteriorate forever. Like you hack a flake off, or you even peel off a flake with your bare hand, and then the flake itself is like bullet hard. You know, all the rock at the Crag is bullet hard, but there's some stuff that's just like has cracks behind it, is a little bit dislodged. You know, you don't want to risk any of that stuff falling out on somebody. So there's definitely some choss hacking to do, but the rock itself is really bullet, and the climbing is super interesting. I think it's kind of like a sandstone rifle or something, but with more compact rock.
I mean, that sounds pretty rad, sandstone rifle. And just when I've been to Africa once, I didn't climb any sport routes, but I did climb up at like Table Mountain and stuff there around Cape Town. Nice. And I remember the rock being like pretty, like I actually preferred the climbing in Cape Town to the climbing in Rocklands, mostly because I'm not much of a dinoer, or like at least not huge dinos these days. So I kind of got like spanked a little bit.
A lot of people say that the rock in Cape Town it's like overall it's a little bit friendlier on the skin. It's a little bit more rounded. It's not as pebbly and grainy and porous as the rock in Rocklands. Like the rock in Rocklands is actually quite sharp. I think that's one of the biggest drawbacks about Rocklands. It's like super pretty. There's tons of, you know, big stunning lines on this, you know, amazing landscape, but the rock is pretty sharp. But the rock in Cape Town it's a little bit more forgiving. It's like more rounded holds, scoops and stuff.
Cool. Will there be like, so I know your fiance Katie, I just watched like some of the videos that you guys have been making to kind of refresh myself, and I had seen some of those when they came out, and I forgot, like especially the highball video, I forgot just how well made that video is. I mean,
thanks.
You guys are kind of have a power couple thing going on there, I feel like. Will there be stuff like that about this wall that you were developing? Because it sounds like it was kind of a more hectic situation. Yeah,
so we've shot a bit of footage already, and the plan is definitely to make a film about it. Yeah. Cool. Katie is not super psyched on the approach, unfortunately, and I think that she probably doesn't want to go up there as often as I do. I mean, I went there. Her and her sister went one time, and I probably went like, I don't know, 15 times or something like that over the course of the summer. But the plan is definitely to make a film about it. It's just such a cool story. You know, like having to leave California in a hurry and not expecting to do any outdoor rock climbing, and then basically devoting my whole summer to this Crag. Like, And then, all the community involvement has been really cool too. Like, I think people just really like to be involved in something new. Like when there's new development, new psych for an area or whatever, new routes to climb on, people get psyched. There were so many people came to the Crag before there was even a single route like fully developed, just to see it, hike stuff up, maybe climb something on top rope or whatever. But after, like, now that there are more routes developed, like, yeah, a lot of people have come up, made contributions of their own, and climbed the stuff that we put up. So it's been really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. The pivot that you made there from like, okay, I'm working on like one of the hardest crack pitches, trad pitches in North America to now I'm in a different hemisphere in a different season, and I'm gonna like use this other side of my identity to like make something valuable out of this situation that's obviously, really difficult situation, like emotionally and logistically. Mm-hmm. That kind of pivot is exactly what I think is so interesting about you, because first of all, you're vulnerable enough to talk about why that trip happened the way that it did, which I really respect. But second of all, you didn't just do a training block, which maybe that has ups and downs, I don't know. But the fact that you were able to find something that was really motivating for you and focus on that thing instead, I think that's like a super interesting component of you as a climber, it feels like to me. Is that do you feel like that pivot is is that something you've like cultivated, or is it just natural to you? You're like, yeah, I'm going to train, but then somebody shows you a picture of a wall and you're just like, no, to hell with training. I'm going to go develop some routes. It's just automatic.
I have always had a hard time sacrificing like time outside doing something adventurous and wild and new for like the long-term gain, I guess, because I think that, obviously I could have been like, no, this wall is sick, but I'm not going to do this right now. What I'm going to do is prioritize Rockland season and get my fingers as strong as they possibly can be or whatever, and that would have been a strategy that most, maybe a lot of other pro climbers would have taken. I think I get too psyched on outdoor rock climbing, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that even if I wouldn't have found this crag, I would have found some other area to do something similar at. Maybe I wouldn't have put quite as much time and energy into it, but like, yeah, I don't know. I just love being outside and exploring potential too much to sacrifice that for clocking in. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, for better finger strength and more power or whatever. But I know that if I want to climb harder than I ever have before, or even just harder than I currently am, like I have to make some sacrifices. Obviously. I mean, I think like, my philosophy about training is that 90% of the people doing it probably don't really need to do it, but I do need to do it to get better.
What is there something that makes you say, like some experience or some thing that makes you say that? I'm just curious.
You mean for myself or for other people?
For you specifically. Well, I mean, because like I talk to people all the time who have that assumption about themselves, but most of them have been climbing for 3 years and they're climbing, V7 or 8 or something like that. You've been climbing for 30 years and you've climbed, what we could say, a little harder than V7 or 8, right? I mean, you just put up three new 514s in a suboptimal season that you also developed, in pretty short order. Like you have pedigree, right?
I mean, I think what I have is like a lot of experience climbing on a lot of different types of terrain and through, all the disciplines that rock offers, I guess. But what I don't have is seasons in the gym, like doing circuits, lifting weights, doing off the grounds, whatever, all the things that most pro climbers do in their training season or their preparation season or whatever. Like I've never really had a preparation season. I'm just like I'm kind of scheduling my year around trips or objectives, and I'm kind of just going from one to the next with some downtime at home. But when I have the downtime, I'm like going into the gym and doing commercial sets, which isn't, really like, I think if I do that consistently enough, I do feel some gains, but they're temporary gains, and I'm not making like lasting impact on my finger strength or whatever. I mean, I think like I have spent seasons doing the same thing on rock for long enough that I feel like, wow, I feel really strong, or I feel really fit or whatever, but I've never even stuck with one single like training block. I've always started, and then something happened, and I don't know, it's like I have to move out of my house, or I have to, I'm like get distracted by an area or by a project or something, and then I lose interest. Yep. But I think that if I wanted to climb, a significant number more like of the grade that I have climbed already, or if I wanted to climb a harder grade, I would probably need to put some time in not climbing outside. But yeah, it's just, that makes sense. I think I've always just been inspired by so many different types of climbs, and I don't know, and just by the exploration of finding new stuff and challenging myself on new different terrain or different disciplines or whatever. It's so hard to, I think if I only did one thing and I had a life that required me to be in one place for longer periods of time, I probably would end up training.
Yeah.
Or I'd quit climbing. I don't know what I would. It could go either way.
It's like, I think it's really tricky too, especially because you're such a jack of all trades. Like I've always found, I don't have the experience that you do, but I do relate to the idea of just capitalizing on whatever you have right now and like kind of following your motivation. And like, if I feel like I'm really fit because I just did a sport project, like, but it's now bouldering season, like I might try to find a really long boulder where I can like roll that fitness forward into something valuable. Mm-hmm. And I do physical training. Maybe I do more physical training than you. Actually, I think I almost certainly do, but that feels more like a necessity for me with where I'm at in like my life and my health. It's not as much of like that sacrifice is just a more obvious sacrifice for me. But, the idea of doing block lifts is a great example because, maybe that would show up in like some things you want to climb in Rocklands, or maybe it would show up on like the sport wall that you were just climbing on. But I'm not convinced that it's going to show up on like Meltdown as an example, right? That feels like you kind of do want to be inspired and just like show up to be really curious and like give that thing your best effort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. My journey on Meltdown has been very strange because I tried it in the fall of 2023 for the first time. I had always wanted to try it. Like it was it's not super far from the bay, and it's just an obvious prize. It's such a sick line, and we don't need to talk about why Meltdown's cool, but basically like I finally tried it the day that Connor sent it. Like I tried it on top rope, and it felt really hard, but on my third day of top rope attempts I sent it clean on the rope, and I even like placed all the gear on my way up. Like okay. I basically like mock led it just without the lead rope. And I was like, sweet, wow, I'm going to do this like super fast, like people are going to be impressed with how quickly I'm going to do this. And then like I went, so basically we were like leaving for Costa Rica right after that. And I only had one day to try to lead it before we were going to leave and like leave the season. Like, I was going to go to Costa Rica and drink booze on the beach and stuff and drill chaw. So like, I was probably, I was thinking, the other funny thing was when I sent it on top rope, I had just taken some time off because I hurt my elbow. Like I wouldn't say I was like feeling like I was in peak performance shape or something, but it is really physical. Like every single hold is sideways and all of the feet really suck. So you have to, there's a really, big sort of power endurance, like crimp strength power endurance challenge on it. It's very, very physical. It's like, you would think it's I think if the holds faced upward, it would feel more like dancing up the wall at Smith Rocks or something, but it's not like that at all. It's really powerful, and it's really, since all the holds are sideways and all the feet suck so bad, like you're really pulling quite hard with your fingers for a long time, and obviously I didn't do it in 2023. I was like scared shitless the only day that year that I tried to lead it. I decked, basically, like I soft decked, and then I came back this year pretty early, prioritizing like, okay, this is the year. I have tons of time. I'm gonna send it, and after 3 sessions, I didn't even feel close to doing it on top rope again. Like it took me and then I never let it clean. I never top roped it clean again. Like I don't know how many days I had on it in 2024, but like 12 or something. And like I was figuring out a lot of great beta and a lot of great subtleties that made the route easier and dialing in conditions and stuff and skin. But like I was giving lead burns and I was getting very close to making it through the crux on lead, but I would go through the crux on lead, and then I would fall at the upper crux. Like I never even one hung it, so I didn't even feel like, I felt like I was definitely getting closer, and maybe I could have sent any day, but maybe I would have tried it for 6 or 8 more days and not sent it. It's just such a weird journey on that route, and it actually is. It's, for me, it's quite a physical challenge. I think doing some like circuits on crimps would probably.
Yeah,
I don't know what I mean. You could tell me.
Maybe some block lifts are in order, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you would think that a route like that would be more like technically challenging and, like dainty sort of dancing up the wall style, but it's kind of the opposite.
Well, I've had this experience a bunch of times with problems that I've climbed, and then I've talked to other people who are working on them, where like I remember the climb as being very physical because I'm largely like a more technical and flexible kind of climber, and I like to really use my body and my legs. But I'll talk to somebody else, and they'll find the climb just so technical and like really challenging to understand the movements and like how to use the footholds and stuff. And we're just having different experiences because I'm not as strong as them, but they're not as technical as me. And I think we have this habit of talking about these things like they're very static or absolute, but it's always relative to the climber and the experience they're having. And like you were saying about Meltdown, like it's even relevant to when you try it. It's totally possible that in 2023, whatever you did before you went there, or whatever you did the season before that, or the season before that, just had you primed. And then in this, last year, it just wasn't the same for whatever reason, and it's always hard to quantify those things. And I think that's an argument for very long-term training, but it's an argument against very specific training. Because if we made assumptions about what would be good for Meltdown, and you like made that sacrifice that you don't want to make, and then you went to Meltdown, but the things we made assumptions about were wrong and you felt bad on it, it winds up backfiring, right? Which is, I think that's part of why I like to just capitalize on opportunities and keep climbing outside. It's just like feels like you get 80% of the goods that way, and you miss out on the 20%.
Maybe, yeah. You're trying 80% of the goods instead of trying 20%, but you're doing 80% of that 80% instead of 100% of that 20%. I don't know what the
exactly. Yeah. It's like you're taking the biggest, the fattest slice of the mountain instead of just the peak. But then, you always get to the end of the season and you're like, I really could have taken that peak. That would have been nice.
I've had a lot of seasons like that.
Cool. That's actually something I was interested in. And that's how I characterized this conversation to you, was I kind of wanted to use like a bird's eye view of your whole career to kind of get a sense of like what's put you where you're at. And the whole Meltdown conversation and the wall in South Africa is that just, to me, it really paints a picture of like what you do. You really do just kind of take on just about all the angles of the sport. And I find that really cool and motivating. So the first bullet point you had was that you started out with doing comps, and you were just mentioning a second ago that sometimes you'll go to the gym and like you'll climb on the set boulders, and that does make you feel kind of powerful and stuff. And in my head, I'm thinking like, dude, I've seen Ethan do some crazy shit on Instagram in the gym. So obviously you're no slouch there either. Is there a competition that springs to mind, or something that you feel like had a big impact on you early on?
Maybe my first junior nats when I was 12.
Super early.
Yeah. Well, the first junior nationals I went to, I won, and then I won like 3 more in a row after that. It's funny. The first junior regionals that I went to, the same year that I won that first nationals, Honnold was in my age group, and I got third, he got second, and this kid named Johnny Weary got first. I got third actually in regionals, and then I went on to win nationals. I think I just fucked up in the finals. I didn't climb that well, and I think actually it was funny because when I look back overall, like the best performances I had have mostly come from like the highest pressure situation. So maybe I just do better when there's like more pressure or something. But
Interesting.
but yeah, I think doing the youth comps, I credit the youth comps for propelling me to like to try as hard as possible to see what, how good I could be at climbing. Mm-hmm. I think I've always had a bit of a competitive spirit, and I did a lot of sports growing up, but when I found climbing, obviously it captured my interest a lot more than other sports. And I think that I was like psyched on climbing before I found the comps, but when I found the comps, I was like, oh, this is more than just going to the gym and like top roping 5 9s and 10s. Like there's a whole community here. People are psyched. Like I think seeing other people's enthusiasm really got me psyched. And then I think it just like seeing other people who sort of represent you in a way, like other youth competitors. I know for a lot of people that's like people who have had similar life experiences or similar cultural backgrounds or whatever, like seeing people who you relate to doing a little bit better or a lot better than you're doing, I think it can elicit one of two responses. It can elicit, shit, I'll never be that good, or it can elicit like, luckily with me, it elicited like, I wonder if I could do that, like maybe I can do that. And I think the thought in the very back of my mind was, I definitely can do that. So I think like that, I think doing the comps really, it got me psyched in a way that wouldn't have been possible without the comps. And if you look at most really high performers on rock, most of them have a comp background.
Yeah. It's almost like I think the pipeline used to be almost mandatory. Like it was almost, I don't know. There were definitely people who were just climbing on rock in your era, and I think if you go much further back than that, people were almost predominantly climbing on rock because that was just kind of more of a sport, I guess. But yeah, nowadays it feels like it's both. It's like branching off in a really serious way, but then the people who compete at a really high level, even though they only go climb outside for a week, like they'll do some crazy stuff in that week because their capacity is just like through the roof basically, and they're so good. They're so coordinated. It's like pretty wild. Yeah. I was kind of curious too. Like when you mentioned comps, I was thinking like I had this memory of Ethan Pringle from the comps because I think you were probably doing adult nationals like around the time that I was getting into climbing, and like I was like, whoa, you can like watch climbing competitions online, like that's cool, because it was the earliest days of that. And I remember you injuring your shoulder, I think, in the competition. Am I remembering that right?
I did injure. I tore my left labrum at ABS Nationals 2009 in Boulder.
Yeah,
I would be surprised if there was a live stream of that comp, but maybe there was. There might have been.
Yeah, it might not have been. I remember. I think I remember seeing
afterward or something.
I think I remember seeing a video of the move, and it's like at the time my brain was like, I can't believe that somebody can do a move that's like that complicated. And now it would be like the most pedestrian, simple move on like the
right.
easiest qualifier route or whatever.
You have a limb that stays on the wall. It's like not even complicated at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that a major injury for you? Obviously.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, looking back on it now, it seems like the prevailing attitude about injuries like that has changed a little bit in how to deal with them. But yeah, I mean, I felt this pop, tear, whatever you want to call it, like I wouldn't say dislocation. I don't think my shoulder actually dislocated, but I basically I felt something give in a way that I was like, that was bad. And then I got an MRI pretty soon after that, and the surgeon who eventually did my surgery was like, yeah, I look at hundreds of these and you have a torn labrum, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think scheduling the surgery took kind of a long time. So I after waiting to get the surgery and recovering from the surgery, it was probably 8 months that I basically didn't climb at all. 9 months maybe, yeah.
But then one of your longer layoffs?
Definitely, yeah. I've never had an injury that kept me sidelined for that long. Fortunately, knock on wood. But
don't say so far.
So far. Yeah, so that was I mean, I basically gave up on my climbing career when that happened. I thought it was over. I just didn't know people could recover from something like that, Yeah. And it still gives me problems. Even when when I was in South Africa, a month and a half ago, maybe a month ago now, I basically had to take almost 2 weeks off because I did something that hurted. I don't even know what, but it was hurting enough that I was like, oh wow, I really can't climb right now. Now it feels okay. I'm back in the gym and I'm jumping to holds and stuff, and it's I think there's always going to be a bit of hesitation around it, around using it in compromising ways. I would never do the move that I heard it on in nationals, that 1 year. I wouldn't do something like that. I would figure out some other way, but yeah, that was a major injury.
I was going to ask if anything changed about your approach going forward. Did you go back to the comps when you came back to climbing eventually? That wasn't your last big nationals, right?
No, I got second at nationals in 2011, I think. Okay. So 2 years later, I did go back to the comps, obviously, and it was scary.
Yeah,
it was really scary. It was very heady, to go back after tearing my labrum, because I felt fit. But I just felt scared. I was doing, all the sort of compy moves of the day that you would do in the gym before going to these comps. But then at the comps, I was like, oh God, what if it happens again? Or what if there's some messed up one-arm dyno to a left hand that you can't match or something, or, whatever. So, but I think I was just a bit more cautious after that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And now I'm definitely more cautious.
It's an inevitable consequence of a long career, I think, in the sport.
Yeah,
you just sort of accumulate. I have a very optimistic, rosy take on injuries for sure, but some things do change about your body in a permanent way, especially when the injuries are severe and you have to adapt. The good news is, as far as sports go, climbing is the sport that maybe gives you the most room to adapt to your tweaks compared to other sports. There's very, very certain things you won't be able to do with very, very certain injuries. But by and large, a torn labrum it's a big deal, but it's in the 20-year view of your climbing, it's not that big of a deal, which is pretty cool. I mean, you went back and you thought your career was over, and then you got second place 2 years later.
Totally. Cool. Yeah. Very surprising. But yeah, I would say overall, it hasn't limited me nearly. I mean, I really did think my career was over. I was taking classes at City College because I was like, well, I better go back to school because this climbing thing isn't going to work out. And of course, once I was healthy again and I was climbing all the time, then I lost interest in school again. But yeah, I it hasn't limited me nearly as much as one might think, especially having kind of some persisting problems around it.
Yeah, I think that's also maybe a benefit of being an all-arounder and being really good at pivoting to different goals and kind of thinking about what you can do with the stuff that you have. I don't know, I have maybe for living in the Northwest the most annoying tweak right now, which is my right hamstring has been bothering me, and pretty much every boulder within 1,000 miles of me has a right heel hook. And like, yeah, so it's just, even with that, I'm being flippant. There are tons of boulders that don't have a right heel hook, right? So you just find other things to focus on, or you just grit your teeth through it, depending on how much of a stubborn jackass you are.
I partially tore my right hamstring in Rocklands last season.
Oh, last season. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On monkey wedding.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember seeing that video. Yeah. Okay, I don't want to jump ahead. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but that makes me want to ask about other boulders. I'm going to keep it in order. So, I think this was probably around the same time, or, well, yeah, I guess you tell me the timeline. I guess actually some of the high balls were even before. I know you did, like, This Side of Paradise and Evolution and things like that. You were talking about them in that video that Katie made called Addicted to Fear, the video of your Rocklands highball season, basically, last summer, which is, I'm a aspiring amateur highballer. I've done a handful of things that I think are pretty badass, but nothing compared to even the most mundane thing in that video, which is it's just it's such an impressive video, and it's so well made, and for me it really captures a lot of what I think is interesting about highballing. And it's cool. It was cool to talk to you in our pre-interview about the Bishop highballs that you did way back in the day, and then go watch that video and see this very clear through line of like what inspires you in climbing and what motivates you. Because out of all these different disciplines that you're interested in, I feel like you have such a bright fire for highballing, it seems like. So take me back to Bishop and the Buttermilks and these huge lines. Like, where did that all start?
Well, I think if you consider highballs from like a sport climber's perspective, I think it just makes a lot of sense. There are these obvious high lines, but in a way they're kind of like mini sport climbs or something. And I think if you know how to climb for more sustained periods in a more relaxed and focused manner, if you know that you're someone who can like do moderately difficult moves without over gripping too much, or in a way that's like focused and determined but not reckless, of course, then I think it sort of changes the way you can approach highballing a little bit, because you're like, okay, well, like I know I can get to there, and when I get there, like if I try hard enough, I'm X% sure that I can get through and send the boulder, right? So it's kind of a percentage game, I think it's like, okay, what are the odds that I'm going to fall off this crux at however many feet off the ground, and if I do fall, what are the odds that I'm going to get hurt, Mm-hmm. And so it's like you're kind of just taking calculated risks. But I've always been drawn to highballs because, I mean, they're just these lines that beg to be climbed. And I think that there's something, for me at least, there's something really inspiring about approaching a challenge that feels intimidating in like a psychological way. Mm-hmm. There's a different sort of inspiration about approaching a challenge that feels intimidating in a purely physical way. But I think that highballs, like all of the boulders that I want to climb most in my career that I haven't done yet, are all have like some sort of intimidation factor. Yeah, I don't know. I think like I started sport climbing, and I built a base of sport climbing before I ever really got into bouldering outside in a serious way. I was like 12, 13 when I took my first sport climbing trips, and I did that for a few years, and it wasn't until like 17, 18 that I was doing more trips just for bouldering. And so my background is definitely, like my most formative years are definitely based in sport climbing, and so like I don't know, I mean, there's an obvious draw to highballs that is like undeniable for a climber. Whatever amount of fear looking at a highball strikes in you, there's no denying that like there's an appeal there. And but I think that if from a sport climber's background, I think that you have a big advantage in highballing because you're just, whether you're attached to a rope or not, you're just used to climbing for long stretches in like an efficient and relaxed manner, and I think that really helps with highballing, because the last thing you want to do is like overgrip and slip off super high. You either want to like commit or you want to let go, basically. And I think it's like if you're used to turning on that switch of I'm a little bit tired, my skin is a little bit sweaty, and I'm slipping a little bit, but I think I have it. I'm just going to try 100% here, and usually it works out. And I think it's like it's a conversation with yourself before you leave the ground about like just that calculated risk. What are the chances that things are going to go badly, and is it worth it? And I think that you just have to be as honest with yourself as you can. I think that the couple of times in my career where I've made, I haven't been as honest. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's like, what is greater, your psyche or your fear? And sometimes it's a little bit hard to know, actually. Like sometimes you take a long look inward and you're like, I don't know. Like I'm pretty afraid, but I'm also pretty psyched. And, maybe you're like, I think I'm less psyched because I am so afraid. And then it's not always easy to determine, how you'll feel on the wall. And then maybe you get on the wall and you're like, oh no, my body is rebelling against the situation. Or like, you're like, oh, I actually feel a lot lighter and more free than I thought I would. And I think it's like just the time now or whatever. So sometimes you just have to get on and see how you feel.
Yeah, that's so relatable. And it makes me remember this story that somebody told me back in the day. I think it was my friend Ryan Palo, who's like a really strong climber in Bend. And he was telling me like this thing that had been related to him by, his mentors, that like you have two cups when you start. You have a luck cup and a skill cup, and the luck cup is full. And your job is to fill the skill cup before the luck cup runs dry. You can like never have both cups be dry. And I always thought about that a lot. And every time I'm like thinking about embarking on a highball, because there's a few that I've kind of like, I'm dabbling with to see if I'm more psyched than I am afraid. It was just such a relatable idea because I'm way more afraid than I've ever been, but I'm also just as psyched as I've ever been. And I'm basically dabbling with them and asking myself like, okay, my luck cup is definitely pretty low these days, So have I filled my skill cup enough to do a good enough job on this to like make it manageable? And it's kind of hair raising, but I haven't lost my enthusiasm for it. It's just a lot more complicated than it used to be. Is that the same?
I relate to that a lot. I feel like my luck, I can, when you talked about the luck cup, I was like, oh yeah, I think that that's a funny analogy to make, but I feel like that's a decent way to put words to it, because I feel like my luck cup has been slowly draining over the years. And I do feel like I approach potentially consequential situations with more caution and more fear, I guess. Like, looking back on the highballs that I did in those early years, I need at least 4 times the amount of foam to feel comfortable doing them now.
Yeah.
like
well,
I'm just way more scared.
Because it's 2025, right?
Right. Everyone has way more pads than they used to. And people are more supportive than they were back then for stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like my luck cup is definitely, it's been drained, and like more, it's got less liquid in it than it ever has before. So but it's funny because I'm still doing just as crazy or crazier stuff, but I'm just having to do way more preparation and just cover my bases way more than I used to.
Yeah, I'm really curious to talk about that, partly because I think it's interesting, but also just selfishly because I also like head point boulders and then try to send them. So I want to see if I can try to understand your process a little better. First of all, I want to talk about the luck cup thing really quick. Like, I think the cups are opaque, and that's what makes it so hard, is like, I genuinely don't know what's in the luck cup. So I don't know if I fall with my feet 15 or 20 feet off the ground, like, will I just be fine? Like, because I've taken those falls before and been fine. And I'm still a very strong person. Like, I squat and stuff. Like, I have legs, like, it's not like I'm a skeleton, right? I'm not super frail. So like maybe there's more in the luck cup. I don't really know, it's a crapshoot. Do you feel like you had a come to Jesus type moment where you really like poured out a bunch of that luck and you were like, okay, well, I can't do it like that again. That needs to be the last time I ever hang it out there like that.
I have, every time I've taken a really scary fall, I've always had some premonition about it. I've always had some feeling like this. I'm very scared, and I'm very scared for a reason. Like I've been doing this long enough to know when I'm putting myself in a more risky situation. And overall I've been so lucky. I mean, I've had a few sort of close calls, but I've never been badly injured from a fall. And like you said, I think one general rule in life that I've learned is it's not the things that you anticipate that harm you the most. It's the things that you don't see coming. I think if you're really, if you're approaching dangerous situations with an abundance of caution, it's probably not what you imagine that is going to hurt you that will hurt you. It's something, it's when you're least expecting it. It's like breaking a hold on a warm up when you don't bother to put pads below it or something. It's probably not, falling off a highball or falling off meltdown, ripping gear or whatever. I mean, although those things, you want to be prepared as prepared as you can for those situations. But I think if you approach those situations with an abundance of caution and respect and preparation, I think that you probably do have more fluid in the luck cup than you think. I mean, that's been my experience, at least. I think that I've noticed myself. I've noticed a lot more intrusive thoughts when preparing for dangerous climbs than I used to. Like, I'm definitely more afraid and more insecure in general in life than I was when I was a teenager. Obviously, I felt basically invincible back then, and I just had I think I had a lot less imaginary fear enter the picture. It was just very much more
rational.
I just had a much more rational take on the situations I was getting myself into, and I twisted an ankle here and there. I also broke my heel, or fractured my heel, falling off of the mandala in 2007 because I just didn't have enough pads below me. And that was a lesson for sure. But I think the older I get, the more I notice these intrusive thoughts, like even in the gym sometimes where I'm pulling onto a boulder that has really shouldery movements or something, I'm like, is this the time that I injure myself or whatever? And, luckily the answer's been no, but I have those same thoughts approaching highballs outside. Like, what if this hold breaks, or what if I, grease off super high and fall uncontrollably? And that stuff just, those are, I think it's like, you can't ever know how rational or irrational those thoughts are, but I think some of them are sort of, maybe they're easier to peg as irrational. It's like it's pretty unlikely that, again, it's just a percentage thing. It's like, what are the odds that I'm gonna take an uncontrolled fall from the very top of this boulder that I've rehearsed 10 times on a rope? It's pretty low. And if I do, what are the odds that I'm actually gonna get hurt? Also, probably pretty low. So
if you set it up right, it should be pretty low.
If you set it up right, yeah. I mean, what are the odds that I'm gonna slip off the mantle, this V1 mantle at the top of this highball, and fall past the pad platform? Yeah.
It is a possibility. I think the really tricky thing is you can put that percentage on it, but like you said, the cases where you get hurt, the cases where things go wrong, they're always clearly things that were not factored into that percentage. And so it's like there's an intuition, I think, to it. And then as you get older, your intuition grows, but also your awareness of your mortality and your fragileness, those things grow as well. And so there's a dissonance there, at least that I feel. And I don't know, maybe you can relate to this too, but the thing I've been working on head pointing for the last season. I'll go try it. And I've been getting top roped on it, which I want to talk about a little bit, but I'll go try it and I'll trial the moves, and it has like a jump at the top. And I found some really good beta for the jump last year. And I was like, okay, this is like 100%. Like I have no fear of falling on that jump move now, because it's actually a pretty easy move, but your feet do have to come off the footholds. And I'll go try it. I'll feel that way. I'll be like, I've got this easy. And then I'll come home and I'll watch the video of myself working on it. And I'll be like, that is fucked. There's no way I'm doing that. Do you ever have that feeling? Do you ever like, you have one sensation at the boulder and then you're thinking about it later and you're like, there's no way I'm doing this?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I've even had the scenario happen where I pull onto a move and I look down and I'm like, hard no, I'm not doing this. And then I like see someone else try it and they take the whip, and then I'm like, all right, I'll try it again. I get back up there, I give a half-ass attempt. Oh, it's like not so bad. Okay, and then like eventually you're just like hucking balls at this move that you thought like there's no possible way I'll ever try this, you know? Yeah. But I think like I have. Yeah, I mean, I think you can probably trust yourself. Like, do you think that there's a scenario in which you could fall off that move and be okay?
The jump move is the move that I just wouldn't want to find out what a fall looked like, but I'll for sure, the pads will be set up in a way that, you know, and then I think pads. I was thinking about that. I was like, I'm going to take my backpack and fill it with some stuff and like go up there on a rope and like throw the backpack up at the angle my body will be going and just kind of see where it lands, you know, and like, okay, the pads need to be a solid like 5 feet back from that. And I don't know, I might yoink some of your beta there and either use some inflatables or like some cardboard boxes or something, because
I was going to say,
you know, if I fall on the first chunk, then that's kind of expected because there's harder moves down there. But if I fall off that jump move, like something's gone horribly wrong, you know? So you want the landing to be.
I think the thing that I worry about with anticipating like my performance on a potentially dangerous climb like a highball or a heady trad route or whatever is, am I going to be too scared to? It's kind of like when I imagine doing what Alex Honnold does or something. It's like, am I going to be so distracted by the fear of falling that I'm not going to be able to perform well? Am I going to be so distracted that I'm going to be climbing like shit, basically? Like, I'm not going to be climbing relaxed. I'm not going to be weighting my feet enough. I'm going to be over gripping. I'm going to be tensing my muscles too much. Like, I'm not going to climb how I want to climb or how I climb on top rope or something, you know? I think that's the thing that I worry about sometimes is like, how different is this going to feel when I pull the rope?
Can you get in flow, basically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can I get in flow? And oftentimes, I climb better.
On the go.
Yeah. On the go, especially if I've done a lot of preparation. But like on Meltdown, when I pulled the rope, I was such a basket case.
Yeah.
I was so scared.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's, I think something that's in my head with the highballing is like I did 2 kind of, for me, landmark highballs in the same year in Bend when I lived there. And
I think I've seen the videos. I've seen some videos, yeah.
So like one of them was like, they're fairly similar in difficulty. I don't really know for sure, but like one of them, I just nailed the preparation and I knew my idea of the percent chances and my idea of what it was going to feel like was like spot on. And I did that one first. And then the other one, what I thought was like I have a 99% chance and it's going to feel great actually turned out to be like a fully horrifying experience where I wasn't in as much flow as I would have liked to be. It was colder than I expected. I got numb. I had like I just had a rough time. And that was the last like serious head point that I did, which I think was like 3 years ago. And so it's hard for me to remember that I have all these other head points like prior to that that went fine, because of the last one was like a really more challenging experience where I kind of, you know, I feel like life sort of grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and was like, just so you know, like, you know, you don't know everything. Like things can change up here really, really fast, and you're like kind of too high to have full control over the situation already. Do you feel like you have clear guardrails for yourself when you're trying something on a rope where you're like waiting for it to feel a certain way before you'll try it ground up? Or do you just kind of intuitively try it until you're like, okay, I'm kind of getting close now, and then you start thinking through the logistics?
I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think it's more like I want there to be an acceptably small space between my performance and the danger sort of thing, where I want them to like meet somewhere in the middle, basically, where I'm like, I'm not filling in a very big gap there when I pull the rope and go for it, because I've definitely done things like I've definitely, and this might sound totally reckless, but like I remember doing the Shining Path in Red Rocks, and I didn't head point the whole boulder before I pulled the rope and tried it, on lead or like without the rope. And maybe I should have. It's hard enough. It's not like the crux is very long. Like you do a few setup moves and then you're in the shit. And I think or maybe I did do it, but it's not like I had a big margin, Like I think on a lot of the scariest highballs I've ever done, I think that like there was definitely a small gap there between like the possibility of sending and the danger involved, and I think I just sort of let my enthusiasm or my desire fill in that gap. Like on Get Railed and Rocklands, I never sent the whole boulder. I mean, I don't think Keenan did either, but I think it was pretty clear that Keenan had a slightly larger margin than I did, and he basically sent the day that we did it on his first or second try, and I was like letting go from the crux because I was scared, and I was like, it didn't feel right and stuff, and then I kind of just eventually I was just like, okay, I'm not trying to send the boulder, I'm just trying to get up to the crux and try, And then I got up to the crux and I tried and I did the crux, and then I was like in the top part of the boulder and I was like, oh god, I'm here now. And my margin is definitely smaller than I thought, than I wanted it to be. I think in the back of my head I knew like it was going to be small, but I didn't know it was going to be this small. And I got up to like the last hard move and I like looked down, I looked over at the adjacent boulder that had a pad on it, and I was like, can I jump there? And then I was like, that seems really sketchy, and also I'd be so mad if I did that right now. So I just like got my foot up and did the last move and topped out, but I was like, I mean, I think I always know. Like, I always know when I'm getting myself into a situation that is gonna feel like that whole session on Get Railed. I was having such a hard time climbing, like getting myself into a relaxed space to try in like a way that felt like good. Every time I pulled on the wall, I was like, this is so heady, and my body is just filled with electricity, and it's just shooting at my fingertips. And I think I always know, like, when I'm putting myself in those situations. Like, I don't think maybe once or twice I've been a little bit surprised, but I think I've been doing this long enough that my body knows when I'm putting it in a situation that it kind of maybe doesn't want to be in. And yeah. Fortunately, I've been lucky, and, my instincts kick in the right way at the right time that like makes it okay. But I think I would like to think that the fear is not as realistic as my head makes it feel. And then my head is sort of like putting that fear into my body. And it's like, I think a lot of that fear is probably a little bit overblown or over realized, and that's probably a good thing. It's probably keeping me safer.
That's a guardrail. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that's not a bad thing, but yeah, I mean, when I look at what like big wave surfers are doing, or what athletes in other extreme sports are doing, like they're risking their life every time they're doing like a double backflip on like 100-foot jump or whatever, and it makes what we do look so much more tame.
It's so controlled, right? Yeah,
right. And we're working with a static medium, and we're not working at speed really. And but I think it's it's just like easy to like have the worst case scenarios.
For sure.
It's easy to give some credence to the worst case scenarios when your body feels like it's in fight or flight mode already.
I think that's really the trick, is like to accept all that fear, rational or irrational, and like to just sort of breathe that in and be able to let go of it and accept it, and then move on with this thing that you've kind of decided that you want to take on. It's just a question of like being experienced enough and being present enough and calculated enough that you make that choice at the right time, and that you don't make it so early that the rational fear is actually like significant and you're taking on more than you should.
Yeah, these days I don't make that choice too early.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like Get Railed was like maybe one of those moments to you where you were like, okay, that was maybe a little more than I should have done. But you wanted the boulders, so you made that choice.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was like, the psych outweighed the fear, but the psych was maybe not, like, I just wanted to do it really bad. Like, we had all the pads there. Keenan just done it. Like, I wanted to hop on the Sen train, you know?
Yeah.
Which, you know, and sometimes it's like, it's worth it to just throw caution to the wind and see what happens and take the fall, and it's probably going to be fine. And if you don't,
especially early in your highball
exactly
career.
Yeah, when you're more robust and elastic.
Yeah, but I also feel like on the counter example, or I guess the contrary, is like, as I get older, I haven't done a whole lot of head pointing, but I have done some highballing, and I've done a little bit of head pointing lately, and it feels like as I get older, because the consequence is increasing, just because, you know, I can't take as huge a falls as I used to. Like, even the most calculated and most prepared thing still has a little bit of throwing caution to the wind, just in the sense that there's not a whole lot of people out there who are in their late 30s or early 40s who are doing this kind of thing like at all. So I'm like almost by definition not a very cautious person, you know?
I mean, it feels so much easier to be a little bit reckless when you're a teenager or whatever. I mean, the consequences are just so much higher when you're our age, and like we're
so tough.
Well, I think it's like I mean, I do feel my fragility and my mortality way more acutely than I did back then, and it does feel like it would be so much worse if I got hurt now, the way in the same way that, you know, it would feel maybe slightly less consequential as a teenager, because you just have so much more time, and, you know, your body heals well, and you have so many more years of high performance left. And now it's like, I don't know, maybe it's prudent not to put those years in jeopardy as much as
must so feel worth it.
Now I put cardboard boxes below my highballs.
Did you ever actually
policy.
Did you test them? Because I don't think I saw it in the video.
So when we put the boxes down under Lapel de Vide, the first highball in that Addicted to Fear film, I did jump off the climb. Between the first and second laps that I did on the climb, I jumped off from like halfway up, and it was great. It was like super cushioned.
When I was watching it last night, I was like, did he do this more than once? Because like the shot of you topping out that like pans over to the sunset, I'm like, there's no way that they just like timed his ascent perfectly. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but that is such an incredible shot.
Yeah, totally. I did it twice that day, and it was like a really overcast day that whole day. It was actually like, the boulder was a little bit wet at the top when we first got there, because it had rained like the night before or something. But, you know, we had like, everyone who wanted to try it had a little top rope session on it, and then we pulled the rope, and I did it once, and then it was like getting to late afternoon, and the cloud layer had an obvious gap right above the horizon, and I thought, okay, we're gonna have like a very short window where the magic hours, like the light's just gonna peek through this gap, and sure enough, we had like, I don't know, 3 minutes or something. So I was waiting there for like, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes, ready to put my shoes on and do the climb again in that red, you know, dark orange light. And fortunately the light lasted like just long enough for me to do it one more time.
That's awesome.
But yeah, and then in Yosemite, I did the boxes trick on one other climb in Rocklands, and I also didn't fall off that one, but we did like jump into the boxes afterward and like demolish them basically. But
single use.
I mean, I think if you have a couple extra, you can sort of like rebuild them and like, you know, prioritize the spot where you think you're going to land the most. It's not exactly single use, but it's not like, you know, right, you want to put it under some dyno that everyone's trying over and over again or something, you know.
Yeah.
But I had John Glassberg buy 20 cardboard boxes from Home Depot and drive them from Fresno to Yosemite last fall so that I could put them under these two really, really high boulders that I did. And I have to say that the ones that I salvaged in Clan William that were like used were just way more cushioned than the brand new Home Depot boxes.
Oh, got it.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
And maybe there's a way to like set up the Home Depot boxes if you do have to buy some to where it would be more cushioned. Also, I think if you're going to do the boxes thing, you want a pad platform above it that you can like Velcro together somehow.
Yeah, so you don't slip.
So
you don't punch through. And
exactly, yeah. And it just like collapses the boxes more evenly.
Right, if you punch through a pad layer and land on a pad layer, you're still on pads. But if you punch through a pad layer and just your foot goes into cardboard boxes, like there's just no way that that's going to turn out well.
It could be fine too, but it would be better to not. It would be better to not find out. I think.
Let's not find out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're trying a highball, are you just like Gree Jumar, kind of try one move at a time, take the Gree whips?
I really don't like taking Gree whips. I hardly ever rope solo on just a Gree.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your setup?
I'm a bit irresponsible. I just use a single micro with like the neck lanyard. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And cool. I really like that setup. I mean, you need some weight on the rope below you, but like when I was in Rocklands with Keenan and Katie in 2022, he was like trying the finish line. I mean, pretty much every boulderer. I think that one of the reasons that I excel at highball bouldering is because my tactics are maybe a little bit more advanced than other people's. Like, I think having a rope solo device that you feel really safe doing like a longer sequence of moves on, it helps. Mm-hmm. At least it helps me a lot, like get a true feel for the moves and stuff. And I can climb more relaxed and stuff. So, but yeah, Keenan was taking these massive like Gree whips and like, you know, I don't think he was slicing his rope, but I was like, dude, this is so sketch.
It also hurts. I find them like more painful on my body than a normal whipper by like because the stretch of the rope is not as helpful as it is. I feel like when you take just a normal whipper and you're falling straight down instead of like having any swing into the wall, it feels just very jarring to me to take a, you know, like it's a foot or two is fine, but like several feet onto a Gree I'm really not a fan of. So
I should probably say a disclaimer here, which is that I would not recommend anyone rope solo on just a single micro. That is my setup, and that's what I'm comfortable with. But that is not what is recommended, I think, by current standards.
The nice thing about a single though is it's a lot easier to like commute up and down if you want to try different moves versus like
that is the nice thing. Like if I want to lower myself just like a few feet, I've learned to do that really easily.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that like obviously you don't want to, you know, you don't want the micro to fail and like,
well, yeah. And it kind of, the micros are, if the micro is like your primary progress capture, it's kind of like sharp, but as long as you have plenty of rope, that's fine. But if you're just using the same rope over and over, you would want to like check it more often if your micro was your primary, I think.
Yeah.
I've been using I'll use a Microtrax and this is a Petzl Microtraction is the thing we're talking about. I'll use that, and then I use a camp lift above it, which is really nice. And the camp lift is just a camming thing, so it doesn't mess the rope up. But the downside is like if I want to escape, or even if I just do a move and then I want to go back down and do that move again, it's just a huge shuffle of crap. So it's like once I'm in red point mode, that's great for just trying to climb a whole sequence. But if I'm just working out moves, that conservativeness of using both devices is actually like super annoying. But I just don't want to accidentally deck off that mini tracks. So, yeah.
Hasn't happened to me yet, but I know that like people have had accidents with micros. Maybe not necessarily rope soloing, but like Jumaring or whatever.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what the climb with the jump at the end was.
I'll send you a link to it. It's a climb here in Leavenworth, and there's a guy here who he puts up nothing but amazing, beautiful highballs.
Mark Mercer?
Yeah, and he does them ground up, which I just think
is... Oh, wow.
is a super
Crazy.
super impressive.
He did this
guy,
ground up.
Impressive climber. Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. He'll clean stuff on a rope, but he climbs them ground up. So
Okay.
which is impressive. I don't know if he's the type of person who would want me spraying for him on a podcast, but yeah, I just find him.
I didn't know that
impressive.
part. Yeah, I see a lot of his posts. He climbs some really beautiful stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure you've seen the line that I'm trying, and it's legit. It would push me to the edge for sure.
Okay.
So TBD.
Cool.
For me. Yeah.
Well,
maybe some inflatables or some cardboard boxes
or both.
something. Or both. Yeah,
Cover all your bases.
Yeah, I did like a good highball in, gosh, I guess it was fall of 23 now, but I actually assembled so many pads. This has never happened to me before. I actually assembled so many pads that it didn't feel like a highball when I did it because we had a full triple layer. And I was like, we've brought the ground up like 2 feet, and now this boulder feels like a normal height boulder. And it is still a consequential boulder because the move at the end is quite difficult. But I was just shocked after trying it on a rope and just trying the opening moves with like a couple pads to feel them out. When we suddenly had 15 pads, I was like, I've really taken the sting out of this thing.
I guess it's just like, what experience are you looking for?
Yeah, a safe one in that case.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, that's the
choices.
experience I'm looking for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you just have to make a compromise somewhere, and I think it's really cool that people like Mark are very uncompromising in their style. But he's also just a better highballer than me. There's like no bones about it. He's better at it than I am, and clearly can get into that state that's very effective really easily. So
That's impressive.
I'm going to stick to head pointing for myself.
It's impressive to me when people seem to not have much of that irrational fear.
Yeah. Or to have really good control over it. And I mean, I think it's, again, this is something that I find fascinating is like, watching your climbing videos, and not just the highballs, but other stuff that you've done. You are able to like sit before the climb and get into the zone and like use your breath as a tool to like kind of relieve some of that pressure, or at least like sit with it in a really effective way. And I think for a lot of people, like sitting under the climb for 5 minutes and breathing just makes them have a nervous breakdown. And so like clearly you do have some of that too. Like it must be working for you in some way. And I wanted to ask about that. Is that a practice you feel like you've cultivated for a really long time? The deliberate breathing?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how it started, but I do like pay attention to my breath a lot, and I do think that breathing is like a very underrated tool for climbers. Mm-hmm. I think if there was any space left in climbing performance coaching that I would want to like help out with or lend some credence to, it'd probably be like around breathing and around
breath
like
work.
Mental preparedness and stuff,
Oh, I was gonna say the only reason I know that the breathing thing gives some people nervous breakdowns is because when I suggest to people that they work on that practice, I've had people like really embrace it and fall into it, which is me. I've been doing that for quite a long time as well. And then also people who it just makes them really anxious, which I thought was so interesting.
I think that there's like, I mean, I have also noticed that sometimes if I'm really nervous, the breathing, there is like a grace period or like a sort of break-in period where for a few minutes I feel more anxious. And then I have to like keep breathing. I have to stick with the practice. I have to try to keep a mindful attitude. And then eventually I do relax. So I think it's something that sometimes you just have to stick with. And then maybe sometimes there's just no amount of breathing that can like, or maybe I'm just going about it wrong. Maybe it's like, taking really deep, deliberate breaths is counterproductive. Maybe you want to try to be relaxing your breath, but I don't know. I don't
think so.
No, I don't know.
Right.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think that when I sense the nervousness, I have a small bag of tricks that I like to dig into, and I actually wrote an article about this for climbing like a few years ago, about about breathing. But I think that like there's no amount of time that basically the longer I prepare myself for an attempt with breath, the better the outcome, or the more relaxed I feel on the wall. There's like, if I spend 30 seconds, I'll have the benefit of 30 seconds. If I spend 5 minutes, I'll have the benefit of 5 minutes. If I spend 25 minutes, I'll have the benefit of 25 minutes, and that will be better than, maybe my hands will get cold, but I'll be way more relaxed.
I think that totally makes sense, and I jibe with that. I think the trick is when you start with that practice, I think the idea of 25 minutes is just too much to bite off, basically,
I've almost never done 25 minutes. When I was projecting the nest, I would often be there. I mean, sometimes I would drag other people up there, and be trying it, at 10, 11, 12, I'd be trying it at late at night or whatever. But a lot of times I'd be up there by myself, and it was nice to be up there by myself because in between goes, I could get all warm in my comfy clothes and go sit on a rock and just meditate for 10 minutes, and just practice mindfulness. And I feel like I really needed that practice up there, because I felt so crazy, trying this boulder by myself.
You put so many sessions into it, right?
Yeah. And just the from an outsider's perspective, it seems so insane to be up in the middle of the desert, over an hour's walk from the car, late at night, trying to grapple up this rock. You just it feels really crazy, and I think it's nice to just I don't know, have something that's grounding associated with the efforts.
Does the nest feel like an experience that was really formative to you, in the sense that working with fighting that pressure was something that you had to really kind of level up in your climbing, or that was a plateau you had to get over of was it the highest pressure thing that you feel like you've had to deal with?
Man, hard to answer that one. The highest pressure thing. I mean, I've definitely been in situations that felt much more pressurized for shorter periods of time, finals and comps or whatever, or this is my last day to send this climb before I have to travel internationally back home or something. But I think in a certain sense, it did feel quite pressurized because I had just felt like I had been trying it for so long, and I, kept wondering if I was wasting my time, if it was still worth it to keep trying. There was just a lot of that conversation happening.
Yeah. Yeah. The value question becomes so clouded. I think if you just try something for a few days, it's pretty easy to be yeah, I still want this. But after you've kind of racked up dozens or hundreds of hours of hiking and gas money and all that stuff has added up to this kind of, you were saying, to the outside observer seems totally obscene almost. And climbers, I think, would be able to relate. But even when you start to hit that 100 session mark, you have to be kind of wondering well, is it the thing that I'm doing this for, or is there now some obstacle within myself that is actually the thing I'm trying to overcome? And it's not really about sending this boulder anymore. That would just be representative of some, I don't know if it's a feat or even more just a task that you've achieved,
Yeah. I mean, it feels after, 50 days or whatever, it definitely feels like it needs to be about more than something just ticking a box, and I think it will become that for sure.
Yeah.
Any project that you invest that much time into will represent something that that has to be an evolution within yourself.
Yeah.
Or
I forgot I'm spacing on the boulder. Oh, monkey wedding. Yeah, you mentioned monkey wedding earlier, and I feel like you've tried that on quite a few different trips too. Does that feel like you're starting to get dug into that one as a long-term project?
Well,
you were very close when you hurt your leg.
Yeah. I tried it a little bit in 2022, and I thought, wow, this boulder is really, really hard for me, and I don't even like it that much. But over the course of the last 3 seasons, I tried it a little bit in 2022, I tried it a little bit in 2023, and then I tried it a little bit more last year. And I've slowly been learning, like I've slowly been gathering a lot of like learning and nuance and stuff on it, and like going into this next season knowing what I know now, I feel like it's well within the realm of possibility for me. I mean, I basically almost did it the day that I hurt my hamstring on it. I think that, you know, it's hard to say exactly how close I was. I had a lot of energy left when I let go, but my skin was slipping, so I didn't feel like I just had no chance on the next move. But I climbed up to where I let go like just fine. Like I didn't even feel like I was trying all that hard. Like I hit all the holds perfectly and stuff. And I think the conditions also were like amazing that day. But I think the biggest limiting factor will just be like, can I pull as hard as I need to pull with my hamstring?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Block lifts and hamstring curls, dude.
Yeah, I guess so. Hamstring curls, like with the machine.
I think the machine is sick, but
Okay.
the problem with the machine, at least from as a coach, from a coach's perspective, is just that climbing gyms don't really ever have them. Maybe you're lucky enough in the Bay Area.
I think Ironworks has one.
They're pretty sick, and they're sick for just rehabbing hamstring injuries too. Like the research is pretty compelling that the full range of motion is really helpful.
Okay.
You know, versus like other hamstring exercises you could do where it only moves through like part of the range of motion. So, yeah.
Would you go for high reps or high weight, or what would you recommend?
That's a good question. I mean, do you have any lingering issues with your hamstring?
So I have been heel hooking pretty much indiscriminately in the gym for the last couple months, and I can feel it a little bit sometimes afterward. It never really bothers me in the moment, but sometimes I can feel it a little bit like afterward, like after I leave the gym or something, but it's never like, I'm just like, oh, there's like that, I have a sensation there, but it's not really like painful. It's just like saying hello.
It's still there.
Yeah, it's still there, but it's not like, I mean, I couldn't heel hook to save my life for, you know, a month or something, maybe 2 months, 3 months after I heard it. So it's definitely gotten a lot better, but I just don't know. I mean, that heel hook on Monkey Wedding, it's so close and it's so aggressive.
Yeah.
And even before I hurt my hamstring on it, like I would feel little pains. I'm not sure if it was in my hamstring or behind my knee, which is where the hamstring attaches. Like that I would have to, I was trying to warm up like extra for it before I pulled on that climb.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a little bit worried that I just like will get there and I'll like, I don't know what I'll have to do. Maybe have someone power spot me a little bit into the move or something and just feel out the weight that I need to give it. But the reason that I hurt my hamstring on it was because I was like doing that big bump out right, and I hit the intermediate and I just sagged a bit further away from the wall than I wanted to, and I thought I could just like reel it in, and so I pulled extra hard with the hamstring.
Pulled with your leg.
Yeah,
but the thing is, like, or at least my attitude, and maybe now I don't know if the roles are reversing. This is a new podcast, so I don't know how much, you know, you're the guest versus the focal point, and I'm not any kind of rehab professional or doctor or anything, but I think the job of strength training is basically it kind of serves two purposes, and we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's like 95% of the job of strength training is just to raise your physical capacity floor so that you can do better practice, right? Mm-hmm. And then like 5% up there at the tippy top is like, I have learned that doing this move uses this exact muscle, and I'm going to find the dumbbell exercise that uses that muscle and try to make that thing a tiny bit stronger, and hopefully it shows up for me on that move. I would say something that's like a really gross motor pattern, like a heel hook with a hamstring where you're putting a ton of weight on it, probably is more of that first category. And like from the viewpoint of just raising your physical capacity, it's not even really about whether you do more reps or less reps. It's more about how many weeks between now and when you go to South Africa are you hitting that machine and doing some reps, right? Because doing more heel hooks in the gym will for sure raise your capacity to do more heel hooks, but it's haphazard, right? So if you just are going to do 3 sets every week between now and when you go to South Africa, like your hamstring will definitely be stronger than it would be if you didn't do that. But if you just set an intention to do more heel hooks, it'll be stronger, but it's not as like guaranteed or quantifiable, right? So that's kind of more the way I think about it. Again, because I think I'm a little more like you in that, like, I don't really want to be using the hamstring curl machine if I could be climbing instead. So it's like you have to make that deal with yourself of like.
But I really do want to do monkey wedding. So would you do one leg or 2? Describe me.
I would probably experiment with both, because the one thing you might run into if you do both legs is your leg that didn't have the injury might be able to kind of like take on some of the weight, right? And then you won't get as good of a stimulus for the other leg. So maybe you would even want to like do both just to get familiar with the machine at a lower load. And then once you know the machine, do single legs and try to like do that until is it your right leg, right, that's injured? Yeah, so do that until your right leg and your left leg are fairly even in terms of like the sensations and the weights and stuff. And then switch to doing it with both legs, because doing it with both legs, you'll be able to do more weight and it'll be stronger than either leg put together, if that makes sense. Like the whole is always stronger than the sum of its parts because of bilateral facilitation and all this other stuff. Basically, I would learn the machine, then I would do it single-legged until they're even, and then I would go back to doing it with both legs. And the final note I would make, which is just something I just figured out for myself trying to rehab my hamstring, is most of the time when people use a hamstring curl machine, their toe is like neutral or even what we would call dorsiflex. So like they're pulling their toe towards their shin. And I found most of the time when you heel hook, you actually plantar flex, you actually point your toe, right?
You are a monkey wedding for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, almost every technical, I can't think of a technical heel hook where you dorsiflex. It's just not really a thing.
If you're heel
right?
toe camming, then it's like probably not, you're not using your hamstring that much. You're probably using
Exactly. Then the stress is probably more on like connective tissue and your hip and stuff. Yeah. So if you plantar flex on the leg curl machine, you'll feel it way more in like where the hamstring attaches to at the knee, like you were saying, and at the top of the calf, because actually you're using your calf muscle a lot in heel hooks in order to like help stabilize the knee and keep the angle. And I was like shocked when the first time I was like, well, if I'm trying to make this stronger for heel hooking, I should probably be like plantar flexing. And I did that and I pulled on the hamstring curl machine and I was like, whoa, that felt like completely different than it felt before. Okay. And it feels way more the way that it feels when I heel hook. So now I'm doing it that way. I have no idea if like strength and conditioning experts would say that's like a good idea or anything, but it just feels more like heel hooking does, which I think is logical for me.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, I'll try that.
For thought.
I'll go to Ironworks after this and do some hamstring curls.
Yes, that's classic training motivation right there. Is like you get wind of something you might want to try and you just go do it that day. I'll try to message you once a week and be like, hey bro, like you doing your
I think that would be I mean, if my hamstring was like 110% and I did zero other specific training for monkey wedding, I would probably have a better shot than if I did, tons of finger and upper body training and my hamstring wasn't 100%. I think that's definitely the biggest limit.
It's that much of a leg boulder.
It is. It's that move, especially starting that move, like getting to the intermediate and then rocking over and going for the next hold. Like I feel so close to the heel hook that like I think for smaller people the move is obviously much bigger, harder to target. Like they have their own difficulties with that move, whereas I can do less, closer reach or whatever. But I think that the heel is so close and I have to pull on it so hard. It's a very strange heel hook. I feel like it's one of the most aggressive heel hooks I've ever done. I mean, if you're Barefoot Charles, then you don't even heel hook. You just like toe in. I don't know what he does, but he doesn't heel hook.
The ones when you're like wide like that, and then you put the heel like right by the lower hand, and it's just like in your hip basically, and you have to like crank all the way onto it. Like it used to be my favorite move in the universe, and so I've done it 1,000 times. And now like every time I need to do a really intense one of those, I'm kind of like, all right, like knee and hip, like I really do a ton of warming up, and I like try to be very deliberate with how many times I try it and stuff, because it's like you're kind of just putting shear force on like all of your leg joints at the same time when you do those kind of moves. It's a pretty hardcore thing to do to your body, for sure.
Yeah, it's very aggressive.
Yeah. Well, we had a fun side quest there. We should Jesse helps Ethan train for monkey wedding. That can be episode 2. How are you doing on time? Because I can give you the kind of remainder of the agenda. How do you think you're doing on time?
I'm not in a hurry or anything. We can take as long as we want. Yeah.
Sick.
I mean, I don't know how
5
long
hours.
Your listeners want to stick with one podcast, but
I don't know, man. I'm basically my strategy with a lot of stuff like this, like when I'm doing new things, is basically to just start doing whatever it is, and that's how I started coaching. I just winged it, and in the beginning I made a lot of stupid mistakes, but I learned as I went. And I'm doing the same thing with the podcast, so
yeah, I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah. Cool. So maybe we should talk about sport climbing a little bit, because actually you're quite good at both of these things. You're not just a boulderer by any stretch. So I guess let's jump back in time again to biography. I think you got the 5th ascent, something like that, in 2007. Realization, same route, if anybody doesn't know. And at that point, 15A was like still very new in 2007. I don't even know how many there were, but not very many. So I'm sure you've talked about it on podcasts before, but tell me a little bit about the process of going to France to climb 515.
Well, I had been to Seiyus a handful of times before. Like the first time I went, I think I was only 14. That year, the youth world champs was in Amsterdam, and I went to Europe beforehand and did a training camp with Robin Eversfield and some other youth competitors. Didier. I wonder if Sean was born yet. I can't remember if Sean was born yet. He might have been like a toddler or something. But anyway, beside the point. So I'd been to Seiyus a number of times before, and one of those times that I went, I think the second time I went, when I was 15, Chris was there trying biography, and I got to watch him try biography a bit. And I mean, obviously biography is like one of the prettiest routes in the world. And when I planned this trip I also went in 2005. That might have been the third time I went. And I don't think I tried it at all then. But in 2007, I made this plan, like John Cardwell and Gabor, CK, and some other random friends were planning on being, in Europe, in France, in the south of France, and I was like, cool, yeah, I would love to go. And I think my plan was just to go and try biography and just like feel it out, and kind of gauge how I compared with the route, like what I would need to do in order to actually do it. I must have done some training before. Like, I think my training was probably like, okay, do all the 13s at Mission Cliffs. Okay, eliminate half the holds. Okay, eliminate half the holds and then down climb them. Eliminate half the holds, down climb, and then climb back up them with the same holds eliminated. I don't know. I must have been doing some stuff like that though, because I got there, and it was funny. I stopped at a comp on the East Coast on my way to France. It's bouldering comp, and I like sprained my ankle pretty badly. So my first like week or so in France, I was like limping, basically. I was like hobbling around with one leg. We went to the Gorge de Loup, and I climbed a little bit, but mostly I just watched John and Gabor climb. And then we finally made to Seiyus, and I hobbled my way up to the cliff. And on my third try, I made it to where the anchors had been on biography. So I did like the 14C section, and I was like, wow, that was remarkably quickly. Like, this route really seems to fit my style of climbing. And then, so I was like, I feel pretty strong on this route. Dave and Chris were both there that summer too. And So I was trying with Dave a little bit, and then I think after about 10 tries, I did the crux. Like I stuck the red point crux move from the ground, which is like insane. Like I was either like in really, really incredible shape, or I just had zero expectations and I was really psyched, some combination of the two. But I did well on it right away. And I thought, I can't believe this, but I think I'm going to do a biography like soon, you know? I remember Chris even saying, like, I think Chris and Dave were planning on going to this outdoor retailer show in Salt Lake they had to fly back to the States for. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll go, but I don't know if I'm going to do a biography in time. And they're like, you definitely got this. You're going to do it. We'll see you there, whatever. Chris was even like, you're going to do this thing before the next full moon or something. He like cursed me basically. But basically I kept like sticking the red point crux move from the ground and then falling a couple moves later on this move that almost everyone falls on like once, but I fell there for like, I don't know, like 20 tries or something. Wow. Or 15 tries. I fell there like a ton of times. I fell there for probably like almost a month. Also during that time, Dave like figured out this crazy like praying mantis beta and did it. Like he wasn't nearly as close as I was, but then he figured out this beta that worked for him and just like did it on his next try. We almost did it in the same day, which would have been really rad. But yeah, it was really surprising to me and everyone else who was there that I was like doing like super close to this route. And then eventually I found a hold that was like 6 inches lower than the hold that everyone else used, and I did it on my next try. But before that happened, I I was super close all summer, and then I broke a hold on a different part of the cliff, like warming up, and I tore an enormous flapper on my fingertip. And John was like, we've been here forever, let's go to Innsbruck. We like took the train to Innsbruck just for a change of pace. We rode Cody Roth's rickety bikes all the way across Innsbruck every day to like train at Tivoli, and then rode back to Cody's house. And so I was probably like in the best shape I've ever been in. And then I went back to Sayus that September and I found that other hold and did it like on my next try or whatever. But
the craziest part of the story, the thing that I've never heard before, was that obviously all those other tries got you into really good shape, so it's not like it happened in a vacuum. But it's such a classic climbing story that both you and Dave sent immediately after finding slightly better beta, even though there was this long siege where you were like ready to do it with the beta that you had. It's so, that happens so often. And I feel like we've put so much energy into all the like training and the physical preparation and stuff, when a lot of the time it's that little tiny thing that you find at the last second that actually like flips the switch.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, a huge majority of the time, if you're epicing on a project and you're falling on the same move over and over and over, like it's definitely worth going back and trying to refine beta. Sometimes it's hard to refine beta. Like, well, this is a total aside. I don't know if we want to go there, but
do it. Let's do it.
I spent like 5 or 6 weeks in Barcelona with Felipe Camargo trying El Bon Combat. In 2019, I think. 2019? I think it was 2019. And we were trying it together. Like, in some respects, I was almost closer than he was for like a while during the process, and then like he basically steadily made progress, and then eventually he did it, and I was like, falling off of the crux over and over. But the crux was the only part of the route that I really didn't like. For some reason, the way that I was doing it felt very forced and kind of unnatural and like bunchy or something. And periodically I would stop at the crux and try to figure out another method. I probably did that, 3 or 4 times over the course of projecting it. And I could just never find an easier way to do it. And then eventually, like a week before I left Spain or something, I was like, God damn it, I hate this part of the route. I just really need to find better beta. And then I did. I found, like, after so many times of stopping there and trying different methods, I finally found one that I liked. It was, like, more fun, it felt way more ergonomic, and it was way higher percentage. But it took so much stopping and studying that move to finally find this method that I really liked. And by that point, I was, like, so deep in the exhaustion hole, I just had no chance, but it was an interesting lesson that even if you stop and, mess around with other methods once or twice, it doesn't mean that you've exhausted all your options. There's almost always a better way. There's almost always a more efficient way, even if it just means grabbing a hold like a centimeter in one direction or another.
Yeah, I think it's a huge mistake in the projecting process to ever assume that you're like done finding beta. Like there's a quote, it's about poetry, but I feel like it applies to climbing really well, that a poem is never finished, merely abandoned. Like you never finish creating it. It's just at some point you're like, okay, this is going out in the world now, because there's like always stuff to like fine tune. And I feel like that's what we're doing in climbing is we're usually trying to send something. I don't want to reduce climbing to sending, but that's like our arbitrary goal that we've set for ourselves, right? And so the idea that you're going to like find the perfect beta within the first 30% of your sessions and then the other 70% of your sessions are just physical fine tuning. It's I think that's a fallacy.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that climbers make is just like getting tunnel vision with one beta and not exploring other options. I mean, I'm a big fan of beta changes, even like, ninth inning beta changes, like really, really late in the projecting process. I think it always makes a huge difference.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I can definitely think of a bunch of examples where that's true for me. And then it just makes me wonder, like, I can't help but think like, what are the things on the projects that I have right now that I have not learned yet? It's just like that curiosity is just such a thing to focus on. I think it's such a valuable thing to focus on. Do you think you'll ever go back to that route? Because preparing for this interview, I had a memory of you going there to try it and of Felipe doing it and of you not doing it. And I was like, did he ever finish that? And you didn't ever go do it, right?
I didn't. No, I haven't been back since that trip. I would love to. I mean, it's a really cool route. I don't know. I had a bit of a hard time living in Barcelona on that trip. It wasn't like the easiest time in my life emotionally and psychologically, and it would be cool to go back and like make new memories there, and also just like not start from scratch, like have all this learning that I've done.
Have the good beta now.
Yeah, exactly, or at least better beta. The poem is never finished, but
that's right.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of hard routes I would like to do in the world, and it was cool to have that time on that route. It's a really cool route, but the thing that I have thought about doing is going back to biography and trying to repeat it 20 years after my previous ascent.
So 2 years from now, like on purpose, the same season.
Purpose,
that's a super interesting idea. Where does that come from? You just think it would be?
I think it would just be a cool challenge. I mean, I know that the route has gotten way harder. Not only has that hold at the bottom broke, but I think that just all the polish over the last 20 years, there's no way it hasn't. I mean, I've also seen a lot of really good climbers try that route and not send it, and I think that tells me that it's definitely gotten harder.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like there's a tiny part of me that someone could accuse of being a hypocrite, because in all my coaching, I'm just like, you have to like be in it to learn everything from stuff, and you have to like do things multiple times even when you don't want to, and you have to like just keep going back and getting those lessons. But the idea of like going back and red pointing something that was a super challenging and like emotional red point process it's so hard to imagine embarking on something like that, especially because in somewhere like Sayus, you have, I'm sure you didn't climb every other great route there when you were there last. So there's, a whole bunch, you would deliberately be avoiding these other experiences just to like prove something. And I think that there could totally be a really valuable experience there, but in the climbing community at large, like we just generally don't like doing that for some reason. I'm not sure if that's a human thing or a climber thing or what.
Probably both. I think people are afraid to like unsend things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I am. Like, especially with some of the hardest like single move boulders I've ever done, like Industry of Cool or something. I think it would be difficult to get back on it now, and I'm like, wow, how many sessions would it take me to do this again?
Yeah. Well, you really don't know, because if it's a low percentage move, like, it's just there's no way to know. But with something like that, you're just, you're counting on luck and you're giving up other experiences. But with a sport route, I feel like it's a little different because you can count on your experience to make the process different than before, and you can count on a little bit of like attrition, whereas something like a paddle dyno is just a lot more like kind of up in the air how long it's going to take you to do it again. Could do it really fast. Who knows?
I did. I mean, I spent a lot of sessions on Industry of Cool, so I think I've also learned a lot on that climb. I think it would definitely take me fewer sessions than it did the first time.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe I could even do it like first try when I pull back on. Probably not. Probably. That would be pretty sick.
If you're ever there again, you might as well give it one try just to just to know.
I would have such a hard time walking away after only one try.
Yeah, I know.
But,
those things are really addictive for sure.
But yeah, I thought it would be a cool challenge, and like you said, it's like a challenge to sort of prove to myself that I could achieve somewhere close to the same level that I did. But I think the route has gotten hard enough and harder enough that I would have to be even stronger than I was in 2007 to do it.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're also better, which counts for a lot too. But
yeah,
I guess we'll
it
see
would
what
be
you're up to
interesting.
in 2007 if you decide that that's the thing you want to focus your energy on.
I've had this vague idea, this plan for a couple of years, so
That's cool.
Yeah, it would be cool to try it.
Seiyus, pretty beautiful place, pretty like fun place to travel. France is really fun. It's very Type 1. The last thing on our list, because we've hit the other 4 bullet points, the last thing is Jumbo Love. Mm-hmm. Slightly harsher place to get to, slightly more logistically complicated. Mm-hmm. Probably not a route that you would try to go back to 20 years later, but who knows? Maybe not impossible. That would be 2035, another 10 years from now. Ethan's doubtful. That's the last stop on our big picture view of your climbing. So Jumbo Love, I think, biography, obviously a really famous route, but other people had repeated it before you did, and you were there with a bunch of other people. And I'm guessing the process of doing Jumbo was quite a bit different. And again, I know you've talked about this other places, but that feels like a really important, informative send in your career so far. So give us the highlight reel.
Yeah, well, in 2007, that same, I think it was actually a month or two before I went to France, Chris basically called or texted me out of the blue and was like, hey, I'm down here in Vegas with Chris Lindner, who was living there at the time. We're climbing up at Clark Mountain, and I'm trying this super mega project right out the middle of the 3rd tier. You should come hang and try it with me. So I did. I flew down to Vegas and hung with the Chris's and made little trips up to Clark Mountain with them and got on Jumbo Love for the first time. And, you know, as soon as I hiked up to Clark to the 3rd tier and I'd been up there a bunch of times before and I know that there were already bolts on Jumbo Love, but, you know, it was just so far beyond anything that had ever been done. It's not like I was looking up at that part of the wall, or maybe I had and been like, wow, fuck, that looks impossible. But, you know, Chris had investigated it, maybe at Randy's suggestion, and realized that it was possible, and so was like starting to put in the work. And I tried it with him a little bit, and it was just like the most badass sport route I had ever seen, like times 10 or something, you know. And it was just so long and intimidating, you know. How do you even finish it? Like where do you go at the top? I think Chris ended up just taking it straight up where the bolts were already. But yeah, I think that really planted a seed, and I was like, I want to climb this route someday, you know, like as much or more than any other route. And so I went back that fall after having that whole season in Seiyus and being like in the best shape I've ever been in, and put in some tries. And, you know, it was actually, I think I was getting kind of close, maybe not kind of close to sending, but I was like, with better tactics and better beta, I could have been getting pretty close to sending in that fall season. I got past the like hard drop knee boulder at the beginning of the overhang a few times from the ground, or maybe just once, I can't remember. But I was like getting up to the red point crux from the ground, and yeah, and then that winter was when I fractured my heel on the mandala, and so I was on crutches. Then I think Dave told Chris that I looked really good on the project, and Chris emailed me and he was like, I'd appreciate it if you gave me some more time to send this. I don't know if you've heard the story before, but yeah, so I was like, don't worry, I'm on crutches. Like, I can't even walk right now with 2 legs, so I don't think you have anything to worry about. Chris did the first ascent like that next fall, so the fall of 2008. And and then I think after Chris did it, like, I don't know if I like lost a little bit of interest or what happened, but I didn't go back for a few years. I think the next time I tried it was in 2011. And when I went back to try it, I could do all the moves and do all the sections and stuff. I still wasn't touching the head wall at all, but I was like doing sections in the hard part. But I think didn't really feel like the time or place to like fully invest. I think it was just like a weird crew up there. I think my main climbing partner like didn't seem that psyched to be up there or something. And then I think I tried it again in 2012, so that was probably like my 4th season of like, micro investment, and I was a little bit more psyched. I was making bigger links. I think I climbed back up to the red point crux from the ground a couple times, but it still felt like this thing that was like over my head. Like, I
really
think
audacious, right?
It feels very audacious. Yeah, it feels like a very improbable goal. Especially when you're trying it by yourself. I think,
right.
Like, I mean, obviously Chris did it more or less alone. He had the same sort of support system that I ended up having when I did it, but it's definitely like it's a big goal to wrangle with. And, the drive, the hike, the support you need, if you want people to film it there, you gotta be willing to, convince people, drag them up there. It's like, feels like a big responsibility. But yeah, I think so I tried it 2007 and then a little bit in 2011, a little bit in 2012. And I always did really well in it. I think it like the moves and stuff and the climbing on it suited me. But I think that like I never really had the belief that I would do it. I think maybe somewhere in the back of my mind I had belief that I could do it, but I think that thought probably always scared me a bit, like what it would take, But in 2013 or 14, I was with this girl named Georgie, and I remember we were at her dad's house eating dinner one night, and her dad was kind of grilling me about my career, and one of the questions he asked me was like, is there anything that you want to do in climbing? Like, do you have like a main goal or whatever? And I said, well, there's this one route, Jumbo Love, that I've always wanted to do, but I've always been like a little bit too scared to like, fully commit to doing it like season after season or whatever. And he was like, well, what's stopping you? And I was like, well, I think that there's like definitely an element of fitness that I don't feel like I really have. And basically, like, at that dinner table, we were like, you should go all in. You should give yourself every chance you can to send it. And I was like, okay. I was like hesitantly like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I'll never fucking do that route. But anyway, that winter I went to Spain and sort of as like a preparation trip for Clark Mountain, I went to Spain and projected La Reina Mora, and ended up doing it like after extending my ticket home twice or whatever. After 6 weeks. But I was like, fuck, it took me 6 weeks to do a 14C/D. Like, there's no way I'm going to go home and just like do a 15B. Like, that's just not how this works. But I went home and Georgie was like, all right, you're home. Here we go. Clark Mountain, here we come. Like, packing up the car, let's go. So I borrowed my brother's old 4Runner, and we drove it out to Vegas. And our friends Spencer and Vicky, they had committed already to filming the process, so they were up there with us every day that I tried it, pretty much filming me from a rope or from the ground or whatever. And lo and behold, I got to Clark Mountain, and I did this route at the third tier called Tusk, which is just like this mega endurance pitch. And I did it like second try. And I was like, resting on every move pretty much. Like, I was like, oh wow, I'm in incredible shape right now. Like, I have so much endurance. And so I knew that, my fitness was as good or better than it's ever been after, climbing on steep limestone in Spain for 6 weeks straight. And then I probably came back and supplemented that with some time in the gym and stuff. So I had a little bit of power too. And then, yeah, I was like, right away, I was making really good links on Jumbo Love. And I think I also was like getting kind of lucky that season, because sometimes May can be a little bit too warm. And I think it was one of those years where there was still like some storms and stuff in May. So it was like keeping things a bit more cool. And you kind of want it to be cool on that route. Like, if it's warm, it's like a lot of the holds are a little bit sharp and kind of suck and stuff. So it's definitely better to have good conditions. But yeah, I was like linking from the ground up to the Red Point Crux on almost every try from the bottom. And eventually I stuck the Red Point Crux like from the bottom. And I was just like, I had so many years of self-doubt just like melt away in that moment. It was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had in climbing. I had so long to tell myself that I would never do this route. I think I had this like an angel and devil, but the angel's buried way back in my subconscious. Like, you can do it, you should keep trying. And then the devil's like, nah, you can't do it. Just don't even try, and to have that huge barrier crumble away, and then like what's on the other side is like, oh, you actually can do this. Like, it was definitely a profound experience. Like, I remember I stuck the Red Point Crux. Well, it was funny because I was like at that hand jam rest, and I was looking up at the Red Point Crux, and I was like, wow, I feel pretty good. Like, maybe I should just like try to do it. Maybe I should just try to stick this move. And then I got up there and I stuck the move, and I was like, that's when I knew I could actually do the route. And then I got my feet up. At the time I was using the stupid beta, and I got my feet into the next position, and I was like, oh, this doesn't work, and I let go. And I hit the end of the rope, and I was like, immediately I was like bawling my eyes out. And then Georgie was like, okay, I don't think he's going to get back on the wall, just lower him. So she lowered me to the ground, and I was just like crying on the ground for like 5 minutes. But yeah, it was a really, really emotional moment, and like a huge turning point. And then, it still took me a few days, but, maybe a week or two later, I sent the route.
Yeah. You're like releasing that emotion, but also there has to be some sensation in the back of being like, if I did it once, I know I can probably do it again.
I knew I was like capable of it then,
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, there was I think that maybe there were days after that at the Crag where I was like, oh, like, maybe I won't do it. Fuck. Like, the season's winding down. Like, I probably don't have that many days of good conditions left. And I was definitely nervous. Like, it's crunch time now. Like, I knew I could do it, but I didn't know if I would do it. And I think that ticking that box did start to matter a little bit. And the tries where I felt the most pressure after that, like, I still did really well. A couple of times I got past the Red Point Crux, but it didn't feel very good. Like, I felt like I was trying way harder than I need to. But the try that I did it, I flowed like perfectly. Like, I didn't spend any extra energy.
That's the best part of sport climbing. And I feel like that's a part of sport climbing that's just so hard to get from bouldering, that like deep satisfaction of executing just completely perfectly for so long. Like, it is just such a satisfying feeling.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about the tactics for these two huge sport routes that you did. I know you've climbed a lot of other hard sport routes, but obviously these two are like very historical routes and pretty historical ascents. And like for biography, it feels like you're at this huge wall, you know, it has a whole bunch of sectors and like a million classic routes and like tons of people, and you can have a social experience and like go try to on-site stuff if you feel like. You can break up your whole projecting experience and go just try something else for a week if you want to. And then Jumbo Love is, you know, there's other routes there, but it's very isolated. It's not, you know, you kind of are there with whoever you brought with you, basically. It's totally different tactically, it feels like. Do you feel like that kind of played a role? Or, yeah, how did you approach the two routes differently, like from a tactical standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, my experience at Soyuz the year I did biography was very, like, you know, I was so psyched back then. I was so psyched. I was just like, I want to climb all the things, you know? So I did, like, Baba Black Sheep and a couple other kind of side projects and stuff. And there was just no limit to the psych. Like, I would just get up there every day and just be like, I'm so psyched to be here and so psyched to climb. And I did some side questing and stuff, but I think I put in a lot of days on biography, and I was pretty devoted to that project. And then, yeah, and I think it helped that, like, I was trying it with Dave, and that I was also just in Soyuz with John, who was, like, taking climbing and projecting very seriously and had his own projects, and he was, like, having success on, and there was just, like, a lot of... I felt like John and I were there, like, experiencing something very magical and very core about climbing, you know, which is that we just had so much pure enthusiasm for climbing, and we were at a stage in our lives where we didn't have to give a shit about anything else, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, with Jumbo Love, it's like, it's funny because, you know, I was hesitant. I was always hesitant and to go all in and to explore what that meant and stuff. And, you know, my girlfriend at the time was really the one. I don't know if I would have even done it if it wasn't for her support and her encouragement. And basically just being like, no, you have to do this. Like, you owe this to yourself, you know? And also having her there was like, we had, you know, we were like fighting on the hike up to the Crag, and bringing that, like, sort of tense, hostile energy into the projecting process was really, really, really hard. So it's kind of funny, like, on one hand, I owe some of my success to her for her support and stuff, and then on the other hand, it was a very difficult time, and there was a lot going on, like, between us and behind the scenes that was making it even more intense. You know, it's like Project and Jumbo Love is already super fucking intense, but then when you have, but maybe, I don't know, it's like, seems like Chris was maybe having a similar experience up there with Dyla, who knows? But but yeah, and then it's like, it's a very, like, insular experience. Like, you're living in Vegas. I think we had to borrow, we borrowed my brother's car, and then, like, I just felt so responsible for everyone that was involved. Like, for Georgie, for Spencer and Vicky, like, I was like, this was very much my project, and I was like, you know, bringing them in, even though that's probably not exactly how they felt about it. I'm sure they were like, we're just happy to be here and happy to support you and stuff. Like, we really believe in this dream, but it's hard not to feel so responsible for the people that you bring on there. And I don't know. I mean, in terms of, like, tactics or whatever, I feel like I've brought the same procedure to every sport climbing project I've ever done, you know?
Not that different. That's interesting to me.
I don't think so. I mean, I think I've been using basically the same order of operations on almost every climb I've ever done, you know?
That's
it's
cool.
Like, you know, make links, figure out where the hard parts are, you know, make them more efficient, and rinse and repeat, and just, like, keep hammering away. Just, like, make the climb a part of your being.
Yeah. It's almost like the social experience sounds like it was the I mean, I asked you about tactics and you jumped straight to like the people that you were around you and stuff. And I feel like that's that's totally valid because the climbing experience, I think this is true of bouldering, but especially sport climbing, it's like so defined by the people that you do it with, like for whatever, better or worse, but really just, it's almost definitional. It's not even better or worse. It's just that it is what it is because of the people that you do it with. And I haven't done that much sport climbing in the last few years, but that's a part of sport climbing that I really miss, that like you'll get invested in this project. And then when I think back on the time that I was really invested in it, mostly I'm just remembering like hanging out with that person that I was trying that thing with, or they were trying their thing and I was trying my thing, but we were, hanging out all day, because it's just such a more one-on-one or like small group kind of vibe. Whereas with like bouldering, you'll do that with people sometimes, but a lot of the time with bouldering, it kind of feels like more ephemeral or more like big groups sometimes, where it's just chaotic and not as like intense. So I think that's valid.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're left with when you look back on those experiences, like the feelings that you had when you were there, and like I think that those are so attached to the people that you're with. I think it's like with bouldering, it's like you could boulder, 10 days, and you might if you have a partner or you have like a climbing partner or whatever, you might go bouldering with that person, then you form a really tight bond with that person. But also maybe you go by yourself sometimes, maybe you're going with other people and it's different people every time or something. So I feel like it is a little bit different than investing in like one climb where you're going with the same people every time. And then it's like you have these memories that are so entangled with the person and the feeling of the place and stuff.
Yeah. I think that's where we should stop the history. But I have some patron questions.
Sure.
I have an official Patreon and patrons that's real now. So, all right. I think I have a strong suspicion what the answer to this question is, but this person says you can only do 3 or 4 off the wall exercises to incorporate in your training. What are they?
What's training?
So can you name 3 or 4 exercises, Ethan?
Off the wall exercises. Well, I've been doing like foam roller floor angels for my shoulders. And I have a whole like shoulder rehab routine that I've been doing that this PT in Cape Town gave me. Really really great PT, Julia Schmegelsis. Or no, she did change her name to Schmegelsis. Anyway, Julia from Block 11 gave me like a really great PT routine that I probably need some refining now that I've been doing it for a couple weeks, but yeah, off-the-wall training exercises. There was a period of time before I went to Rocklands last year where I was lifting semi-consistently, and I was just doing like all the powerlifting things basically. It's funny, I see on your Instagram you're always like modifying all these different, like doing different squats that incorporate more like stabilizer muscles and stuff, and yeah, I mean, I think there's just different modalities to do stuff in. But I was doing just like some overhead press for my shoulders and some deadlifts and some bench and some squats.
Basic stuff, man.
Yeah.
Goes a long way.
Yeah, but I don't know if I really did it consistently enough to have it make much of a difference. I wasn't like, wow, I feel like He-Man. I was like, well, I feel pretty healthy, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reason I post that stuff on my Instagram, really, part of it is just because I think I want to remind people of the mundanity of it is the thing that's really valuable. But also, I just genuinely enjoy it. Like, basically because all that whole conversation we had about like risk and consequence, like power, like lifting has essentially zero risk compared to climbing. So like I can just, go have a fun session and get a little bit stronger, and there's like no emotional stress whatsoever, which is really nice compared to hardcore bouldering.
Yeah, hardcore bouldering, especially in the gym, does feel like a little bit risky these days.
I was going to say this earlier. I like make myself do, well, I don't make myself, I'm motivated to do like cordo and little jumps and stuff like that. Because I know that as soon as I fully am like, I can't do this anymore, like as soon as I make that decision, like it's a real quick path or a really quick road to just like, I can't do it anymore, And so I make myself do it, or I allow myself to do it. But then every once in a while that bites me in the ass, and I'm like, well, I'm doing it to try to like be able to keep doing it. So if I do it and it hurts me, that doesn't really make any sense. That's like not very, not serving my end goal. All right. His next question, we may have touched on this, but what are a few pieces of advice you would give to your younger self?
Worry less. I think, make more time for yourself. Put your own needs first. And I don't know. I think like worry less in the sense that you can trust that wherever you're at in life is where you're supposed to be.
That's good advice.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to feel like I'm giving myself. Okay. Here, the one thing I will say is that I think I've spent a lot of my life like feeling at odds with the way that I'm feeling or what I'm thinking or my desires or my needs, and I think that I think that I would remind myself that however I feel is okay, and that however I feel is the right way to feel. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And if you could reach that state, it would probably be easier not to worry about things so much. So they're kind of intertwined.
Yeah, I think the two go hand in hand. Also, maybe learn to close crimp.
Yeah. I was gonna say like, what about for these roots? Like, if you could go back in time and be like, hey man, you'd send the nest a lot faster if like.
I think that so on the nest, I would have sent it a lot faster if I would have tried harder to make the prevailing beta work. Maybe, yeah. Because I didn't switch to the like Nale double bump method until my third season on it, and by that point I'd been trying for 2 seasons with beta that I didn't use to send the boulder, although I did get very close. I was basically trying like a variation of what Jimmy Webb did, and so I think like, I mean, it's always the same thing. It's like just try other methods, and like even if it doesn't feel possible at first, like if more people are doing it that way, there's probably a reason for that. It's probably because it's easier. So I think like in terms of climbing, I think like trying other things, and often the prevailing method is the one that works. Or if it's not working, if you're getting stuck with the prevailing method, like come up with your own method. I think in the case of that surely applies to biography. I mean, I would have done it in less than 15 tries if I would have had that attitude. With Jumbo Love, I think a lot of it was just like a matter of self-belief. And I think I just didn't have that for so long. I just like allowed self-doubt to control the narrative and sort of influence my attitude in regards to that route. And I think like, I don't know. It's hard though to just like tell someone. Well, I guess I do shout the word confidence at people all the time when they're climbing. So I think that there is something to that. If someone was like shouting at me like confidence like all the time during those years, like maybe it would have helped. I don't know.
I think it's one thing to yell something like that to somebody while they're climbing. It's a very different thing to like just tell someone to have self-belief like broadly,
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think the conversation around Jumbo Love of I really want to do this thing, but I'm afraid that I can't, or maybe even that I'm afraid that I can, but I'm afraid how much work it would take, is not really a conversation I was having with people. And if I was, they weren't maybe saying the thing that I would tell my younger self, which is that like, you can do this.
Yeah.
And like, if you feel supported enough, you will do this. If you support yourself enough, you will do this. And I think that's like, Yeah, it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to convince someone that they are capable of something that they really think they're not.
That's great. Yeah, I feel like I can definitely relate to that. And I think, obviously, I haven't gone through the things that you have in terms of projects, but I really feel like all my biggest projects have been a process of self-change, whether that's like what I thought it was at the beginning or not. And now I try to go into my hardest projects pretty clear-eyed in the sense of like, okay, I'm not capable of doing this right now, but I want to be capable of doing this. And that's why I'm embarking on this journey. And so to expect that journey is going to be like totally smooth would just be like insane, basically. Like I have to expect that it's going to be full of obstacles because that's what I'm signing up for, is that change that requires going through something really complicated and difficult. So, All right. Oh, do you have something to add? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was thinking about the confidence thing, and then I was thinking about how, like on Jumbo Love, I think the reason that I was in such a flow state was that I had really, and I think this is probably true of a bunch of my other projects, is like, I think sometimes you need to get to a place where something forces you or encourages you to just drop everything that you're carrying up the wall with you, whether that's like expectations or fear or desire or whatever it is, maybe it's just like some amalgamation of all that, but that stuff really distracts and weighs you down. And I think with a lot of my biggest projects, it's like I need to go through some process of like surrendering and leaving all that stuff on the ground, like leaving all that stuff, like just letting go of all that stuff, the expectation, the desire, the fear, even the confidence. Like sometimes, it's like if you drop everything, then what you're left with is just you and the present moment. And I think that's when I climb my best, for sure.
Yep, I agree. All right, Luke asks, what is Ethan's relationship like with the rock? Does he have different physical or mental sensations with certain boulders or roots, or is the relationship more broadly connected with simply being in nature? I think we kind of danced around this a lot, but I thought it was an interesting question.
Relationship with the rock. I love the rock. I mean, so many rock climbs are just like these perfect, sculptures or edifices that Mother Nature provides that are like, so pleasing to the eye and so enjoyable to put your body on and cling to and scale up, and it's like it feels like such a magical experience that connects you with nature. I think that, like, obviously a lot of the mental structures that we make around climbing can diminish that experience quite a bit, like we've talked about, just like the pressure of projecting, expectations, fear, et cetera, but I think distilled down to its purest form, like the experience of being in nature and the experience of climbing is so, I don't know, it's just so fulfilling and so satisfying in so many ways for so many reasons. I mean, just like the presence of mind that it encourages and this interaction with these gifts from Mother Nature. You just look at so many climbs and you're like, wow, how does this exist? Like, this is such a beautiful line in such a beautiful place. And it's just like, it has just enough holds to allow passage. And I think it's just like, yeah, it feels like such a magical experience. And I also just really like geeking out about like rock types and conditions and the way that you have to move differently on different types of rock and all that. So
the relationship is good.
Sometimes it's, sometimes it's unhealthy. And sometimes it's certainly a lot of the time it's obsessive.
Yeah.
And one could argue to an unhealthy degree, but we don't have to go there right now.
by and large, probably a positive force.
Definitely, yeah. I'm so fortunate to have found something in life that that excites me as much as climbing does.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
I think we're all lucky. I feel the same way. Well, I didn't start a podcast to interview people that I look up to, but I do appreciate you coming on the show because I definitely have looked up to you for a really long time. So this was kind of cool to get to ask you questions that I've had in my mind for a number of years. So, and thanks for being one of the first guests. I know it's like totally unproven show, but I think you'll be guest number 2, honestly. So.
Well, yeah, it's been a pleasure. I love climbing, and I love talking about climbing with people who are, deep and critical thinkers like yourself. I always really enjoy reading the content you put out, and I appreciate the fact that you take such a nuanced and careful approach to thinking about climbing and training and coaching and all that. So. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, last question.
Okay.
Sandstone or granite?
Oof. Don't make me decide. Like sandstone or granite to climb on for the rest of my life?
You gotta qualify it. No, just off from the hip, sandstone or granite.
Oh, man. Probably sandstone.
All right.
More holds.
We can still be friends.
I have a hard time. I have a hard time saying that. But
it's not easy. It's not easy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. This has been fun.
Yeah,
I really
for
appreciate
sure.
you coming on the show.
Yeah, of course.
Having such a long conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry you have to edit. You're gonna have to edit 2.5 hours of audio now.